David Gilmour on KLOS. Good morning to you. It's time for Talk in Transition. If you have never heard the program before, this is an all-night talk show. We do an interview, and then after that, we open the phones to the listening public, the listening audience. We can talk about anything at all. Any topic is open for discussion tonight. And it never ceases to amaze me when I see Ray. I've known Ray for, I think, 3 years now. Do you know what the term grounding means? Or being ungrounded, uncentered? I went on vacation this past week, a vacation that was long overdue. I went up to my old stomping grounds up in Lake Tahoe for 4 or 5 days and get centered, as it were. And then I come back and I do a program with Ray, and it's like a big mirror. If you can imagine this, since radio is all about images anyway, if you can imagine a big mirror held up in front of you as you speak and as you observe, what I felt happen halfway through the interview, breaking through some of the misconceptions about the way we perceive things. You know, what really is important in life? And I do talk about this quite a bit, and sometimes we can talk about something, but yet getting in touch with it again is a whole different experience. I mentioned last week, to those of you that tuned in, to those of you that didn't tune in, I am in the process of declaring intentions of opening my own center with a good friend of mine. A center that would be wide in its focused, anywhere from having speakers to giving workshops and donating time and financial donations as well to organizations like the Frontline Foundation. And I guess in a roundabout sort of way, I'm saying that what it really comes down to is the appreciation of the moments. And I want to hold on to this moment right now. I want to stop the clock at 10 to 2 on Monday, June the 24th, 1991 in this air studio. And I want to hold on to it forever. Those that are listening to the program right now, 6 hours from now, we won't be talking. We won't be connecting. We won't be hanging out and talking about what's important to us. And appreciating that miracle, if you will, of being able to make impact on someone, making a difference, breathing in so your heart knows just how much blood to pump in other parts of your body, and then attempt to fulfill that goal, be it open a center, be it go to school, be it teach, be it feed the homeless and the hungry, whatever. We all have that guidance inside that says, Janine, this is what you're supposed to do. Or Bob, check out what you've been neglecting. And yet do we seize that moment, and do we listen to that truth that's unfolded to us? Or do we resist? Do we deny, and we continue on a path of distraction? Spending 5 days in a very serene atmosphere like Lake Tahoe, and then you come back to the city, it's almost like you realize how desensitized you are to the hustle and bustle and high stress of everyday life. Obviously, I'm speaking from my personal experience. And I feel such gratitude and thanks for this program, for you that listen out there, for people that not only talk and teach about the powers of love and compassion and giving, but just as much to the point, those that you never hear about, that do it on an everyday basis as a daily ritual. And a lot of those people tune into this program from time to time. I had the good fortune of meeting a number of wonderful people at last Monday's support group that we do once a month. And I guess I'll let the moment go now. I'm trying to hang on to it, but you just can't do it. There's no such thing as controlling a moment or a person. You cannot control destiny. You cannot control life. The key is to let go and be open and aware to what life brings forth to you. And if you honor those gifts that you have and you honor that intuition and you trust the process, it is amazing how many miracles unfold to you. It is amazing how life gives you exactly what you need in that moment in time. We have some stories to get to tonight. I did not read the paper all week, but Friday I've picked up the San Francisco Chronicle and San Francisco Examiner. One of those newspapers, I forgot, I won't say which one, but I forgot what a joke is. Geez, how they can put out some papers that, oh boy, it's just amazing. So I read the paper Friday. I don't really know what, made a conscious effort not to listen to the news, so you may want to call up and talk about something that happened this past week. You might want to talk about personal situation. Talk. This is this agreement that we have. We attempt to convey where we're at by talking. Sometimes it's quite hard. Sometimes it's easier to just feel. Some Sunday nights I come in here and I'm ready to do a talk show. I'm all fired up. Some nights it's work. We'll see how you make the program tonight. This is your show. This is your vehicle by which you can discuss anything you want. It's your program. I'm the moderator. And sure, I have my own opinions, and sure, I get outspoken sometime, but this is a rare privilege in a society that claims to be a democracy, that claims to throw around this word freedom. Let me give you some numbers. We'll play our theme and actually pay a couple bills and play our theme, and hell with the bills. We'll play our theme and be back with some phone calls. L.A. and the Valley, 213 and 818 area code is our main line, 520-KLOS, 520-5567. In Orange County, the number there is 977-KLOS. In the 805 area, 629-KLOS. And in San Diego, the number is 570-1556. Mark Winnick, our program coordinator, just opened up the phones. They are wide open. The best time to get on is at the beginning. The phones fill up rather quickly. So if you have something you'd like to discuss tonight, why don't you give us a call right now? Phones are open, and we'll be back with more. This is 95.5 KLOS Los Angeles. Good morning. The opinions expressed on this public affairs talk show are not necessarily those of Cap Cities ABC or KLOS FM Inc. Good morning to you. My name is Frank Sontag. We go every Monday morning until 4:30, and as Mark is screening the calls, we have a full board right now, other than one line open in the 805 area. 629 KLOS is that number. I mentioned last Sunday night the center that I am working on opening. A good friend of mine was in studio, and we talked a little bit about our dreams and our goals, and we gave a phone number out that because good old Pac Bell wasn't on their deal, it was not really available till like Wednesday. And there have already been a couple of people that have called tonight and have said, the number you gave out, I called Monday, and there was nothing. So if you want to get some more information about our center that we will open somewhere in the immediate future, if you want to donate some time, some help, anything along those lines, let me give you the phone number to call, and you will get an answering machine more than likely. The number is in the 818 area code, 349-4227. You can leave a message. The answering machine, the message on the machine is pretty much self-explanatory. Again, if you would like any information or any inquiries about the center that I am attempting to open with a good friend of mine, the number by which you can obtain some information or leave a message is in the 818 area code, 349-4227. Also, I want to thank again those that attended our monthly Impact Support Group. Last Monday, we had a huge crowd, and the topic of discussion was money and security. Don't know if money, the money theme had anything to do with the size of the crowd, but it was probably the largest crowd we've ever had. And we will be doing another support group Monday, July the 22nd, 7:30 start time over at the Philosophical Research Society. It is opened up to the public. We ask a $5 donation to cover the cost of the room. If you would like more information on that, I haven't yet picked a theme a topic by which I will lecture briefly on. But we've got a few weeks to decide that again. That will be Monday, July the 22nd at 7:30 at PRS, and we'll give you more details on that, or you can call our switchboard for information either on the future of the center that will be open or the information and lecture at the Philosophical Research Society. All of that information is in the KLOS Community Switchboard. As I commented, I was on vacation to a degree this week, and it was interesting. I happened to be watching TV one night. It's like I had the TV off till Thursday, and no, actually it was Friday, and then the morning guys, Mark and Brian, were on Johnny Carson, so I had to flip that on. And I think it was yesterday, I was watching, the Big Spin, the lottery. I never watched that program, and I just happened to be flipping around the dials, and here's the balls spinning around the wheel. Okay, I'll sit and watch this woman's reaction. And this woman won $1 million, and she went nuts, and the family came down. Everybody was jumping up and down, and I was happy for her. But the thought that kept coming to mind was, and I'll just share it with you for what it is, the thought that kept coming to mind was, would we be this excited about world peace? Would we be this excited if violence didn't exist anymore? We think of this money. Money is security. Oh, $1 million, boy, we're home free now. It's not necessarily true. And we can actually talk about that tonight as a topic of discussion. Money, security, what makes you happy? How much money is enough? We'll go to the phones, and let's see here. John, good morning. You're on KLOS with Frank Sontag.
Hi, Frank. How are you doing?
Good, John, and you?
Pretty good. I want to tell you first that I really enjoy your show a lot.
Thanks.
And you get a lot of very intelligent, wise people on, and that's really good for the exposure. Let's see. I'm a little nervous. Okay, I wanted to discuss the war on drugs with you. And basically, the phony war on drugs.
I was going to ask you, is there a war on drugs?
Not really. Not a real one, at least. Not one, anything for freedom or democracy, for that matter. But did you know that just a few days ago, as hard as it is for some people to get medical marijuana, that the federal government put a ban on any medical marijuana? Do you know some of the things that it can be used for, like the nauseating side effects of chemotherapy, epileptic seizures, glaucoma, stress, which is the #1 killer, migraines, anorexia, I don't know if I mentioned that, and a number of other things. Well, now it was very hard for people to get it before, and now it's going to be a lot harder, if not impossible. And I want to know how you felt about that, first of all. And then I just wanted to mention a few things that I happen to know about the war on drugs.
Okay. I did not know until yesterday morning. I came in to do News to Australia, which I do on weekends as of now. And Chuck Moshantz, the full-time news director here at KLOS, does it during the week, and he sat in for me Saturday, and one of his stories was the very same one that you're talking about. So I did not know it until I read that story, and I was rather shocked, but in the same respect, not surprised. There are medicinal uses to marijuana. This has been going on for centuries, and yet the insistence of the President Bush administration and the then Reagan administration of a handful of years ago, their insistence on promoting the war on drugs and hiding something like marijuana under the guise of the war on drugs, to me, is indicative that they have a hidden agenda. I think the hidden agenda is that the war on drugs is promoted to divert attention from more substantial social and economic problems, such as the homeless situation, such as poverty, or inadequate education, or inflation, or unemployment, or pollution, whatever the case is. I think it is a conscious effort on the part of certain members of the government to promote a helplessness, a victimness in society by which somehow we hear this war on drugs, and there is a certain amount of the population that thinks there is such a thing. I think what goes on is the promotion of the inhibitions of personal freedoms. I see people of color people of minority status right now, where their freedoms are being taken away left and right. I also think the war on drugs, or the promotion of the supposed war on drugs, is also about racism and fascism. I think there are many cases in society where we do not see middle-class white Americans that are responsible for ingesting drugs. You don't see them on the 6 o'clock news. You see people of color. And I think that is, again, a conscious effort to promote racism and fascism in the society.
I agree with you 100%. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's even more insane that we know that our government brings in cocaine and heroin into the United States when we traffic arms and other situations like that. I wanted to quote a few statistics and facts for some people that might not be aware out there. That number one, tobacco kills 1,000 people plus every single day in the United States. In I don't know if that includes the rest of the world, but pretty much in the United States. Alcohol kills 365 people a day, not including 50% of all traffic deaths, 65% of all murders. And not to mention caffeine, which is in chocolate, and then, you know, all the kids eat that. So I'm not saying don't eat chocolate or anything, but you know, it's just crazy because, in all recorded medical history, nobody has ever died from marijuana because it has no toxicity, and you can't overdose from it.
Alcohol and tobacco are the two most dangerous and life-destroying substances by far, but yet they're legal.
Right, and even subsidized the tobacco with our tax dollars. And I believe it's something like 70 to 80% of all the people in jail are there on drug crimes, and 50% of the money that goes to fight the war on drugs goes to fight marijuana directly. If 20% of the people in jail are there for murders, rapes, and robberies, wouldn't it make sense to legalize some of these safer drugs and make more room in jail instead of building more jails and using more tax dollars? And even this, I just found out there's a bill on the floor of the House, I believe a few days ago, or there was, that would suspend our Constitution and declare martial law and round up every single suspected drug user and put them in a concentration camp with forced labor to clean up nuclear waste dump sites.
What is this bill?
H.R. 4079.
Mm-hmm. Can you mail me some information?
Sure, I can if you'd like me to.
I'd appreciate it. And I do thank you for the call this morning, John. There was an article in the Times a few weeks ago about 10.6 million teenagers drink alcohol on a fairly regular basis yearly. That's a pretty troubling stat. We got some open lines. 520-KLOS is our main line. And Scott, good morning. You're on the air with Frank Sontag.
How are you doing?
Okay.
I'd like to basically talk about the difficulties I've had in questioning Israel's policies towards the Palestinians while coming from a Jewish background. Basically, I think that it's safe to say that a lot of Jewish people grow up with the impression that the more right-wing you are about Israel's policies towards the Palestinians, the more Jewish that you are. And basically, it's been kind of difficult trying to shake off that type of impression. I think that in our own religious schools, that we're taught a very narrow point of view, and that they really don't provide the different perspectives. And there are many different perspectives within the Jewish community, such as the peace movement within Israel. That's not really conveyed very well, at least not in the Hebrew school that I myself attended. Basically, such as one thing that I've come across is that when I pose a lot of questions about the treatment of the Palestinians under the military rule, in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. Some of my friends and even my parents claim that I'm being quote-unquote anti-Semitic. They even charge discrimination. And I think that it possibly reflects a very ethnocentric perspective or upbringing we often get towards a lot of these issues.
How is that perpetuated, that notion? Because I know it's fairly predominant in certain circles.
I think that the way it's perpetuated is that when you are in religious school, you are, I think, taught about Israel not as much as a political issue, but more as a cultural issue. That part of being Jewish is believing in Israel as the Jewish state. I think that many Jews, such as myself, or such as the Israeli peace movement, or the Soldiers of Conscience movement in Israel, are very de-emphasized in order to portray a type of Jewish unity, that if you are Jewish, you believe in what Israel is doing. I think that's one way it's perpetuated. I think another way it's perpetuated is that that there is a lot of discrimination out there among many different races, and that they try to just to make us so defensive about it that that they make us feel defensive also about that racially as well.
What do you think the solution should be, or is there just one solution to the serious violence, for instance, in the Gaza Strip area?
It's a real difficult question. I myself think that the occupation should end there, that they should possibly maybe have a two-solution or try to attempt to have some type of solution that gives the Palestinians some sovereignty of their own as well, because they at the same time have their own heritage, their own culture, and their own nationalism that in itself, just that I personally believe, is probably being very repressed right now. I think that that might go some ways. I think that there are certain factions of the PLO, too, that might be willing to negotiate on possibly a two-state solution.
Anything you'd like to add in closing?
That basically I'm beginning to meet a lot of other Jewish people who feel the way I do, who are very skeptical of the way the Palestinians are being treated with the military rule and the economic conditions therein. And I'm finding out that I'm not alone. And I myself was 21 before I ever heard at least the first Palestinian speaker. I'm sure that it's probably the same for many Palestinians, that many of them don't hear many Jews. And hopefully one day that we'll be able to have a dialogue, and hopefully one day Jews and Palestinians and anyone else involved will be able to explore the many different options with this issue without at the same time feeling pressured from either side.
I do thank you for your good phone call, Scott.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Let's talk to Dave. Good morning, Dave. You're on KLOS with Frank Sontag.
Good morning, Frank. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, Dave. How about you?
I'm pretty good. Yes, I wanted to talk about Bill Moyer's report comparing the Persian Gulf War with the home front. And have you seen this report?
Was it the one that was on this past week?
I think it was a week before.
Uh-huh. I don't think I did.
Well, anyway, in his report, he talked about increasing unemployment and homelessness and crime right here in the United States, and he was comparing it with what was going on in the Persian Gulf. It was simultaneously comparing it. And he also conducted interviews of people from all walks of life, and his conclusion was that we're losing the war at home. And I wonder, how do you feel about this?
I agree. I wouldn't necessarily call it the war on home, although I understand that terminology.
Yeah, I know. I don't like it either.
I think that we are, as an American people, and it was pointed out during the interview with Ray, how, in a sense, we are so quick as an American people to want to help other countries or help other organizations that are in need of help outside of this country. But when it comes to acknowledging this, and I laugh because it hurts, the situation in this country and the desperateness by which a lot of us find ourselves in economically hard times, or the way social programs have been gutted, we're in a state of denial. We don't want to acknowledge that this country is in the shape that it's in because we're afraid to.
I agree with that. You know, some of the people that were interviewed were Vietnam veterans. It was very interesting what they said. One particular man was talking about how that he compared what he saw in Vietnam back in the late 1960s with what was going on in his own hometown. And he said that in Vietnam, young children were selling drugs and their older sisters to prostitution. And that was now happening in his own hometown. And I thought, you know, here is sort of, it was kind of a terrible situation. And he also said that it isn't only the low-income people, but many middle-income people are facing similar problems with their children, with the other problems that he mentioned. And I think that if there ever is a way to get people to do anything, I think the only way it can be done, and the only way it has been done, is if it's not only low-income people, but middle-income people are affected. Because just like what happened in Vietnam, when the body bags started coming home to the people in Peoria, in the middle of the country, and in some of the bigger, smaller towns and suburbs, that was what started the anti-war movement really going. And at the beginning, it wasn't the so-called middle Americans. It was basically the low-income people who were being killed. So it seems to me that the only way anything ever gets done is if it has a wide constituency.
It's sad, but I would tend to agree with you that when it does make some type of an impact on a personal level, people are more compelled to do something about the situation. I think of how we react in the moment of a crisis, and I think of how so many can be prevented by a little bit of conjecture and a little bit of foresight, but yet we seem to just have this ritual that we wait to the last minute, or we wait till our backs are against the wall to do something.
Well, I think basically that in our society, what the guest on the Impact program was talking about, the fact is that in America, more than one of the not great things about America, but one of the things about America that you have to understand is America has always been built on self-interest and selfishness. And the idea is this: if the individual says to himself, if I do something for somebody else, it'll make me feel good, or if it really affects him personally, then that's the way the system's supposed to work. I don't think it should be that way, but I read a lot of literature about the people who founded this country, about self-interest and selfishness and all that being part of the whole idea of our society. And they really believed that that was the best way to run a society, because they felt if it affects a person individually, then he's more likely to reach out and contact other individuals who are also affected, rather than the way that your Impact guest said, where he felt he was giving for the sake of giving. I think that's the best way, but in our society, I think the only way it works is if it actually affects one individual and then he reaches out to another individual.
Do you see this country changing toward, say, a more, how should I put this in the words? I mean, we've had 10 years of Republican administrations. I think over the past 18 years, we've had one Democratic president. Is that right?
Yeah. Carter, I think.
Yeah, at the top, I don't know why this came to me, but I'm kind of curious. What do you think about the 92 elections?
Well, right now, I think basically that right now that Bush is very popular, even after the war, and if the economy recovers, especially for people who now are upper income or upper middle income people who are now, because of the recession, was fearful of losing their jobs. He can, and if the news media goes along with the Bush administration, and the news media was very good to Ronald Reagan, President Reagan. It never told, you know the whole thing about Reagan and how the media was controlled. Well, the media is very important because most people get their information from the networks, the three networks, and sometimes some people listen to other news, but most people get it from there. And if the news media plays along with Bush and tries to say that everything's fine and there's no war or no depression or all that, then Bush has a very good chance of winning.
I do thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I have a couple stories I'm going to make reference to, and before I do, I'm compelled to say something here. I have gotten a lot of mail recently with new listeners that have expressed a concern that the program is just about politics or political discussion. This program is about anything that we choose to make it up as we go along, week in and week out. One of the issues that I think is very important to take some time out and discuss is that of personal relationships, whether it's with a loved one, whether it's in the area of how you relate to the environment around you, or a job pursuit, anything on a personal level we can talk about. It's just if you call up and discuss it, that will be the way the program will tend to go. We do have one line open, 520-KLOS, if you choose to talk about that. Your call is welcome. As well as this particular issue that has been in the media quite a bit. Executions on TV, according to the CNN poll, do you favor them? 25% said yes. 71% said no. How would a TV execution affect people's views of capital punishment? 14% said more would be in favor. 36% said they would be less in favor. 40% said no change. What do you think? Do you think we should televise executions? Do you think we should have executions in this country? Is capital punishment a deterrent? Is capital punishment a proper procedure by which somehow we can alleviate violence or deter crime or deter murder? I'm curious of your comments. 520-KLOS is our main line. We are commercial-free, by the way, for the rest of the program. That's good news, so we'll take a lot of phone calls. Gary, good morning. You're on KLOS with Frank Sontag.
Hi.
Hi, Gary.
I'd just like to say thank you to a very special family who helped me out when I was on the street. And I was on the street for 8 years, and up till I was 18. I'm 19 now. It's my first year off the street. And I'd like to say thank you to Tim and Diane Fowdy of Upland. And I'd like to tell all the listeners now out there, if it wasn't for, a small business owner giving me a job instead of giving me money to blow in my pocket, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have anything to show.
Why is it that you ended up in the streets? What happened?
My mom and my dad died, and my brother couldn't take care of me, so I guess, our family just separated on our own merry way. And both my brothers, I have no idea where they're at now. And so.
How did you meet this family that you mentioned?
I was on the street, and I was working part-time for Marzella's Pizza on Huntington Beach. And I delivered a sandwich, a turkey sandwich over to this guy at Tim's laboratory. It's a dental laboratory. And he goes, "Hey, you want some part-time work?" And I said, "Sure. I'm not going to deny part-time work. I'd rather work than beg for stuff." And one thing led to another. I got a full-time job and a career. I learned. People on the street, we're not dumb. I never went to school, but I'm not dumb. I really took pride in my job, and that's what, if there's small business owners out there, they should give a person a chance. Not a day labor, but, you can try them out, give them a permanent job. Something they can, have pride in. Instead of begging for food, begging for money, they work for it. Gives them back their self-esteem and their pride. That's what I think people should do.
Did you ask this particular person or family why it is they gave you an opportunity to work?
No, I asked him once, and he said that he just felt like it. He said the Lord was with it. I told him I'm not religious, but I said, thank the Lord for that one.
Mm-hmm. How are things now for you?
They're going pretty good, except I'm having, emotional problems trying to get back in the swing of life. I don't know how to fit in. I lost a lot of my childhood. Did a lot of growing up early. And people don't understand that. It really hurts to see the way people treat people.
There's a lot of confusion out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that think hatred is a way to react to their own fear of people or things that they don't understand.
I don't know, but if you take a look at one homeless person's eyes, you'll see many years added on to that. They may look 15, there's families out there. If you hesitate to help one person, that guy's probably got a family, and that really hurts. There's small babies and everything in the street. You know, people don't understand. People don't realize that. You know, there's a few bad people, but you weave those out and you get to the families and the good people who just had some rough times.
What would you say to those that say the people that are on the streets are just lazy? If they really wanted to work, they can find a job.
It's not easy finding a job without an address. It's not easy putting your kids in school without an address. You need an address to do everything. People don't understand that. You give a person a place to live till they can get on their feet, and hey, I'll bet you anything they'll do it, because the streets are scary. I know I've been shot once, stabbed twice. It's really, really hard.
How long were you in the streets?
8 years.
How old are you, if I can be so personal?
I'm 19 now.
Mm-hmm.
I was up until I was 18.
Have you ever heard the show before?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at work now. I got to work late tonight, so I turn on KLOS, and here it is.
Well, I hope you keep listening. We have a lot of compassionate people that listen to this program, and I'm sure that maybe you can meet some friends through this radio program. We have a tremendous amount of listeners, and this program, I would like to say, is quite different from most talk shows, and I hope you continue listening. And even more to the point, I want to thank you for the courage to call up the program and talk to a stranger on the air about such a personal tragedy as what you've experienced, and also shared the courage and the inspiration you've had to piece your life and attempt to piece your life back together. I'm sure that a lot of people can maybe think differently about the homeless situation by your phone call.
I hope so.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. You take care. Adam, good morning. You're on KLOS with Frank Sontag.
Frank, yeah, I was going to call in to comment about the supposed war on drugs, but now that you were talking about the death penalty, that got me another interest there. Yeah.
Well, what did you call the program originally to talk about?
About how you were pointing out there may be, about racial aspects and all that with the war on drugs.
Uh-huh. And you picked up the phone to say what?
Just to say, do you think maybe intentionally the government tries to pick on minorities? Because I do notice, a lot of them happen to be busted with drugs, and...
What do you think?
In a way, I kind of do. Really, I don't know why, but it does kind of seem, weird that, maybe like the middle white class people or whatever just don't happen to be, caught. Because, personally, I know a lot of people, really of all races that sell drugs, but I don't know, it's just, I kind of, I started thinking about that. I never really thought about those aspects.
Should alcohol be part of this supposed war on drugs?
How do you mean?
Well, should alcohol, since alcohol is a drug and alcohol kills more, just about than any other drug, if we were really sincere as a nation, we wanted to crack down on drug use, should we declare alcohol in this thing we call the war on drugs?
Yeah. It's just, I guess there's going to be no change with that, maybe, as much with drugs, because those are legal.
What about nicotine? What about cigarettes?
Cigarettes? Yeah, they're killers, too.
Well, why aren't they in the war on drugs? What's the hypocrisy about?
Money.
Money in what way?
Just a big business, legal business.
What did you want to say about death penalties?
Before I go, I just wanted to comment that I can't believe the thing was brought up in the first place. They should be televised. Kind of sick people. What do people want to see? I don't see that as justice. To me, it's kind of just the easy way of, for a person to be killed like that. It doesn't give us the right to kill them, even though, say, with a serial killer, they may have killed a lot of people, but it's not our right to kill them. It's like playing God or something,
Do we become the murderers?
Yeah.
If we act in kind?
Yeah. We act just like them.
Uh-huh. I do thank you for the call. The next call on the screen, Rick also wants to talk about public executions. Thank you, Adam. Rick, good morning. You're on the air on KLOS with Frank Sontag.
Hi, how you doing, Frank?
Good. How about you, Rick?
Pretty good. First of all, I want to really commend Gary, the previous caller. The caller before the other gentleman. If he's still listening, which I hope he is, I want to say, I really feel for him because I have been in almost the same situation that he has been in, and I know how alone he must feel, and my heart goes out to him, and I really commend him. Anyway, you sparked an interest when you brought up the death penalty. When I first heard about the death penalty being televised, it made me sick. I'm appalled by the death penalty. One of the reasons being is, I feel that two rights don't make a wrong. I plan to have children someday, Frank, and I don't want him or her to turn on the darn television and see some guy getting his brains fried out. That's my, what do we hope to gain by this, televising executions? And another thing that I've noticed about executions, I don't know if you've noticed this at all, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed this at all who's listening, is when somebody does something wrong, it's televised. Everybody is off with their head. But when something is done really good, like somebody winning the Nobel Peace Prize, it only lasts a couple of minutes. But with the most tragic events, it lasts so much longer. Why do you think that is? I don't understand.
I think we're conditioned from the very beginning as children to, in a sense, mistrust happiness. We get a loud, clear message about, at least I'll speak from my own personal experience and some of my friends and some of the reports that I've read, that a lot of it has to do with child rearing and how we are raised in a society where somehow the only element of power that is perceived is that of force or is that of aggression. And strength is equated with, on some level, physical force or verbal abuse to a degree. People think of strength and power as aggression and dominance. They don't think of, for the most part, power and strength as compassion or sincerity or humility or any of the attributes that some people profess are what strength is really about. They're kind of incidental. It's a personal experience for someone to say that they have compassion toward fellow human being. But the media is about money and selling sponsors. So you'll see fires on TV or you'll see murders. We as a human species, we go for the quick reaction. Spirituality, there's a subtleness about the evolvement of one's own path in life. And it takes some time. It takes some commitment. It's a slow process. And most of us, we live in a quick fix society. We want it now. I want my MTV and I want it now. So this notion of the death penalty, there are some people out there that think somehow to see it on the television screen, well, okay, then we'll understand what we're doing. I totally disagree with not only the idea of televising executions.
Execution, period.
I do as well. I think it's brutality. I think that there has never been, or a study that I know of, that talks about the death penalty as a deterrent. I'm more interested in why people murder. I'm more interested in stopping the cycle of violence instead of acting in kind. Gandhi said an eye for an eye and the whole world is blind.
Right. Just find out, put these criminals through special training centers. I feel with the money we spend on all this garbage, we could really rehabilitate these people. I don't think anything's impossible. We get hold of somebody who's, a serial murderer, and we rehabilitate them.
Well, unfortunately, the prison system is no longer about rehabilitation. They acknowledged that a number of years ago. It's a meat holding cell is what it comes down to, and it's sick and sad when you think that we are not really educating or teaching or rehabilitating these people that are, in a sense, in dire need of help. And I'll also acknowledge that there are some people in society or some people that are locked up right now that are almost beyond help itself, and they should be locked up for life.
Yeah, but, it's kind of a backward system, because when we release these people and we don't do anything here, they're going to hurt more innocent people, and then we right back to square one again, and it goes on and on and on and on, doesn't it?
Which I would think you might want to ask yourself, well, then does the government really want to solve the problem with crime and violence?
No, they don't.
My standpoint is if they really did, that we would have some major changes instead of the self-fulfilling cycle that it keeps happening year in and year out, and crime is on the uprise. It's a way of keeping the masses in check. It's the way of keeping us disempowered. It's the way that a lot of people think that we need the government. A lot of people think that somehow we're not capable of taking care of ourselves.
Do you think somehow, you made a good point that they don't think we're able to think for ourselves, and they've taken away a lot of our freedom too. A lot of times they push the Constitution aside.
We also get what we deserve. When enough of us demand a government that has integrity and does stand for freedom, when enough of us practice and exercise the right to vote, we will then have one. But we have exactly what we deserve right now as a country. We have an ex-CIA director that's in power, reflective of the masses thinking on some level, or not thinking, more to the point, professing ignorance as to somehow this man best represents what we would like to see other countries in this world identify this country as what we stand for. And it's absurd to suggest that an ex-CIA director, a man that probably sponsored programs that assassinated innocent people a number of years ago, somehow he is what we want as a representative of this country. He is not what I want. Maybe those out there would like to participate this morning and explain that maybe it's what they want, or whatever. We can talk about the whole process of voting. Thank you, Rick. We do thank you for the call this morning. I got to get some reminders out of the way. Noontime Nuggets is a feature Bob Coburn is the host of every weekday afternoon at 12 noon. He plays almost 1 hour of some great old rock and roll. Later on today, he'll play the Monday Blues. Weekdays at 12 noon, it's Noontime Nuggets and Bob Coburn. KLOS also announces the limited edition collector cups available at participating 7-Eleven stores throughout Southern California. Different features from the home of rock and roll are featured on the cups. They are free with any Super Big Gulp purchase while supplies last at all 7 stores that are participating. Santa Monica CPR offers classes each month. There is a $20 fee and advance registration is required. If you want to get some info on that, you can call our switchboard. And Barb, good morning. You're on the air on KLOS with Frank Sontag.
Good morning, Frank.
Hi, Barb.
Well, let's just jump into this with both feet. Friday night, I got a very large lesson in be careful what you ask for. After 8 years of complete and total silence, my ex-husband called up and said he would like to get himself involved in my son's life. And I have to tell you, that phone call was one of the scarier experiences of my life.
When you say be careful what you ask for, is this something that you have hoped for a long time?
Well, actually, in the 8 years since the divorce, I went through a whole range of emotions. I went from what did I do wrong to why me to a whole lot of anger. And there were certain things I had said during the entire process that things like, well, I really wish he would be involved in my son's life. I would like my son to know his father. Things to the effect of, well, the things he did to me, he'll get his. Let's just let this go and work through the anger. And about 1.5 years ago, I started a process of meditation and visualization on this to kind of work through the anger myself. And I fairly much figured I had put the past behind me, and I could go on with my life, and, okay, he's not interested, I'll live with that. And initially I had gotten the call on my answering machine, and I kind of sat there staring at it for about 5 minutes, and I kind of took an addle-headed walk to kind of settle myself down, which didn't help. My roommate said I was white as a sheet, and I decided, well, instead of putting this off, let me jump in with both feet and find out what's going on. And actually, apparently the meditation and the visualization worked, because we had a very adult 2-hour conversation. I got out a lot of all the things that had been unsaid, and we're starting to work towards something.
I want to say that's wonderful, but I have resistance. Well, is it wonderful?
I don't know. At this point, I don't know. If it was one of my biggest concern right now is the reason he gave for deciding that it was time to do something about this was he's active duty Army, and his unit was one of the first ones in the Gulf, and they saw a lot of action over there. I mean, I don't like to use the term action because I had a whole problem with the Gulf crisis to begin with. But he said when bullets are whizzing past your head, you have to kind of evaluate your life. And he came back and found out his third wife had had kind of gone crazy with his power of attorney and was leaving him, so he had some time alone to do some thinking. And my big reservation right now is, yeah, sure, you're scared and you're by yourself, but what if 6 months down the road, what if a year down the road, what if 2 years down the road you decide this isn't for you and you disappear again? Well, now letting you back into my life on sort of an arm's distance basis right now, that's not going to affect me to the extent that him leaving the first time did. But if I let him back into my son's life and my son gets involved with him and he decides again that he's going to split, how's that going to affect my child? I mean, my decision no longer just affects me, it affects my son and his emotional well-being. So I don't know whether this is a good thing. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people since it happened, and they're saying, well, are you happy with this? Are you not happy with this? I said, I really don't know. I don't know whether it's a good thing. I don't know whether it's a bad thing. It's going to be kind of a wait-and-see process.
What would be the technique by which you can also gauge that as time goes on?
Well, initially he wanted to get on the phone and, can I talk to my son? And I kind of said, you know what? You moved out of the house when he was 2.5 months old. He doesn't apply the term daddy to you. Why don't we start this slowly? Why don't you write a letter? Try and explain yourself and close a picture. We'll see if Jason wants to write you back. And my room, I mean, this just came out of the blue. I was talking. In fact, after it was over with, I wrote a mini novel in my journal about it. And now that I've gone back and read over it, I actually handled the situation rather well. Everyone was saying, oh, wow, God, that was a great idea. That'll show he's responsible, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to take this one step at a time. And at this point right now, my son does not know that he called. I figured I'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that
if the letter comes, then we'll take it from there, but I'm not going to build his hopes up in the event this was like an isolated night.
Indeed, I think that's wise, and I also think it's wise to continue to practice meditation and also to take responsibility. You've obviously done a heck of a job raising a son by yourself, and I think that you should have a certain amount of concern with some of the insights that came up. Well, okay, fine, 8 years later, he panics, he being your ex-husband, he panics and thinks all of a sudden he wants to become a father. Maybe first he has to find out what it's like to be a man and find out some of the questions he's been avoiding for years. So it is encouraging for me to hear the amount of responsibility and conviction that you have in your voice and your energy in terms of number one priority in Barb's life right now is her son.
Well, I mean, that's what it is. I'm the one who's been the parent for 8 years, and he did acknowledge, I mean, during the call, he did acknowledge a lot of, he took a lot of responsibility for what he did. He didn't try to wiggle out of it, but, and then on the flip side of that, he's always been a good talker, so you always talk a good fight, Michael. Let's see if you can back it up now. And, I mean, I have to, and I told him first, I said, don't please do not mess with my son or this will get ugly. Because so far I have a wonderful kid, but I don't want to have, 2 years down the road, I don't want to be stuck with an emotional basket case because, you know, you decided this wasn't for you.
Indeed. I appreciate you sharing that with us, Barb.
Thanks a lot, Frank.
All right, you keep in touch. Thanks for the call. Chris, good morning. You're on the air on KLOS with Frank Sontag.
Good morning, Frank. I'd just like to start off by saying thanks for getting people to think.
Well, thank you for thinking.
I'd just like to basically prod you and your beliefs about the future of probably our country and where today's youth is taking us. I myself am a 17-year-old high school senior now, and I'm just curious about where you think my generation is taking this country.
Well, I would rather have, it's like I speak for myself and let other people speak for themselves, and I want to say the future does lie with the youth. The youth has always been the ones that call out and demand governments for the equal treatment of their people. I had a dream this afternoon that I haven't quite processed through, but it was the reoccurring situation in the world where more than 1 out of every 3 governments in the world is responsible for human rights violations. And I'm very compelled to speak out against and for human rights and against governments that promote the inhibition of personal freedoms. We all should have the equal right to do whatever we choose to do with our lives, and yet some governments lock up its own people for singing a song in public. And it's always been the youth that has gotten involved, and it's always been the youth that has the insight to see where governments lie or where wrongs should be righted. And somehow we grow up, we get locked into financial responsibilities or some of the pressures that happen as you get older, finding that job, and somehow we let go of some of that passion that we have when we're younger. How say you, as someone that is, I mean, speak for yourself. How do you perceive the world right now?
Well, on one note, I'm very confident in my own beliefs as to my power to change what's around me. But at the same time, I see quite a few people that I question their knowledge that they have the ability to make change and they have the ability to have say in what goes on around them. I mean, for every one person that speaks out, there's 40 that, by no fault of their own, they're usually tied up in other things. I mean, I myself have the time and I have the ability to question what's going on around me, but there are a lot of people less fortunate than I that don't have the time or the means to really make an effort to change, and I think they're the ones that are hurt in the long run.
And in the same respect, it doesn't take time to know when something is wrong. It doesn't take a lot of effort to acknowledge the truths that everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody. Let's underline everybody. If there is an absolute in life, it's this one. Everybody knows that George Bush is a liar. Everybody knows. The most staunch right-wing Republican, if they want to acknowledge the truth that they have, will acknowledge that George Bush is a liar. But you see, what happens is the simple truths that can transcend us in a moment. If enough of us acknowledge the simple truths, we get caught up in the head games of, maybe we should be lied to. Maybe government should do secret things in covert operations, and then it goes on and on and on and on. And to me, the simple truths are the ones that are the most powerful. And if enough of us embrace those simple truths, such as thou shalt not kill, embrace it in our own lives and practice it on a personal level, we can change the world in a moment.
Well, I also find that the youth of today, just there's so much is thrown at them that they become callous and a little too accepting of really quite outrageous acts that are going on every day, whether it be in government or just really any area of life, and I think that's going to be a major problem.
Well, it could also be a solution as well. It is hard to understand what goes on in the world when we have little understanding of ourselves. And growing up is not an easy thing to do. I think back when I was a teenager. Man, I mean, there was some great times, but there was a lot of pain. I was looking at my daughter the other day, who is now 3.5, and she's so beautiful, and she's so open, and she's so loving, and I thought there was a part of me that on one level just would have do anything to just relive those younger years. I mean, I had so much, the word is not coming up, looking in her eyes, thinking, wow, she has just so much life in her, and yet she has so much pain to experience too, and life is painful. Growth is painful, and pain is neither good nor bad. It's how we frame it. So growing up is hard. Being a young adult is hard, especially in the world today that promotes such ignorance and disconnection, as you hear is somewhat stylish. Again, it's all about money and possessions. Education, the school system doesn't teach self-awareness. It teaches what to learn, not how to learn. So you can have a lot of energy, but if you don't know where to direct it, if you don't know a way in which you can constructively channel that energy, it gets kind of tough.
Yeah, and it's really disconcerting to see many of the passions of my friends being smothered just in the last issue of the school newspaper before I graduated from 11th grade. The principal wrote an article in it saying how the education and budget cuts weren't going to affect us, and how they weren't negative toward us, the student. And to see an authoritative figure like that write something like that is almost telling the students what they should feel and what they should believe in. And I was quite shocked at that.
Mm. You say you're a senior?
Well, I'm in 11th grade. I am a senior next year.
Does school excite you?
Oh, yeah, I enjoy school quite a bit.
Do you have any gauge of what you would like to spend a lot of your time doing in the future?
Well, I'm looking now towards film direction. Whether I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, how indirect a path, but that's where my passion lies.
I do thank you for the call, Chris.
Thank you.
My pleasure. You take care. It's a little before 3 o'clock. This is KLOS Los Angeles. One of the themes tonight has been the war on drugs. I wonder if you have heard of this man or know of this. Richard Gadd may soon be flying for the government again. On May the 1st, the State Department awarded a 5-year, $100 million contract to Dynacorp, an aviation service to conduct air operations for the war on drugs in Latin America. The contract covers flying and managing the aircraft used in drug raids, eradication campaigns, and reconnaissance of drug-growing areas. Dynacorp has proposed using 3 subcontractors on the project, including Eagle Aviation Services and Technology, a company well experienced in Central America. EAST, Eagle Aviation Services and Technology, we'll call it EAST, was enlisted by retired General Richard Secord as part of the secret Contra supply operation. EAST's founder, Lieutenant Colonel Gadd, was an Air Force specialist in covert operations before he retired in 1982 and started several private companies that supported classified military activity. His particular talent lay in chartering aircraft for the Pentagon and the CIA in such a way that the planes could not be traced back to the United States. In 1985, Secord hired East and Gadd's other outfits to ferry weapons to the Contras and build an airstrip for them in Costa Rica. Soon afterward, Oliver North introduced Gadd to Foggy Bottom, and Gadd won a contract to haul, quote, non-lethal, unquote, supplies to the Contras. The enterprising Gadd managed at least one mission in which his crew merged non-military cargo with arms at a time when Congress prohibited military aid to the Contras. And again, the State Department issued a 5-year, $100 million contract to Dynacor to conduct air operations for the war on drugs in Latin America. Kind of makes you wonder what the government's up to about the war on drugs in that country. Really up to. A 15-second ad for the Koranrin Mura Natural Food Company was pulled from Japan's Senotaki Broadcasting Company because it contained the words, pardon me, I'm not well versed in Japanese, I'll give it a go, Genpatsu Babwai. Well, what does the phrase mean? It's translated as nuclear energy bye-bye. The Natural Foods Company has challenged the ruling as an unconstitutional infringement of free speech. The Government Accounting Office reveals the Forest Service has diverted more than one-third of its budget increases. That's one-third of its budget increases designated for wilderness protection. Instead, the funds were used to expedite timber sales to U.S. logging firms. The University of California at Irvine's April International Conference on Environmental Consequences of Nuclear Weapons Development was to have been historic, with top scientists from the Soviet Union and China attending. However, to the embarrassment of conference organizers, the United States government has reportedly ordered U.S. scientists not to participate in that event. A couple more quick stories and we'll go back to the phones. The Customs Service, according to the Washington Spectator, is learning the fine art of burglary. 3 agents were sent to break into the General Accounting Office and snitch 2 copies of a critical GAO report that claimed Customs had not been effective in halting the flow of illegal drugs into the United States. According to the GAO investigative report, a Customs internal security agent climbed through a window and let 2 agents into a GAO office, audit office, where they went through the files and took the report. The Justice Department declined to prosecute because the case lacked, quote, jury appeal, end quote. And lastly, a story out of the Washington Post that perfectly illustrates of contrasts in today's American capitalist society. David O. Maxwell left his job as chairman of the Federal National Mortgage Association this year with $27 million in compensation. The payout is $7 million in annual compensation for his last year and a lump sum pension payment of some $20 million. This particular company, which finances home mortgages, stressed that both his pay and his pension are tied closely to the performance of the company, whose profits increased 45% last year. Now, by contrast, the Food Research and Action Center estimates that 5.5 million people under 12 years of age were hungry in the United States last year. This is according to the New York Times. The study was based on interviews with people in over 2,300 low-income households. Hunger is defined as, quote, a periodic food shortage resulting from a family's limited economic resources, end quote. Hungry households spend nearly one-third of their gross monthly income on food, and yet this amounts to an average of only 68% per person. of only 68 cents per person per meal. We'll go back to the phones and take some more calls. We'll take our musical break in a short time here. David, good morning. You're on the air on KLOS with Frank Sontag.
Hi.
Hi, David.
I'd like to say I met Jim Ladd at the, not to mention it, at the KLSX convention. Frank?
Okay, and the reason why you bring that up on my show is what?
That he said your show is great.
Oh, well, thanks. Jim's a friend of mine, and it was nice to hear him back on the airwaves a handful of months ago.
And also, I went to an improv today, and there was a man that was homeless, and he played a jazz piece on piano, and he did like versions of Take Five and Dave Brubeck and just all this different jazz, and this man is homeless. And if there's a man out there that's this talented and he's homeless. Just think of, like, the people that are out there. It's just amazing. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I would guess that some people maybe in the listening audience don't. I think what you're trying to say, and if you are trying to say this, or if you're not, maybe you can clarify, but what I hear you saying is that such a man of great talents and such a man that has been blessed with an ability to make music as he does, it is somewhat sad to realize that the man does not have a place to stay.
And that our society has banished a certain type or class of people because it can only focus on the dollar bill, on the buck, on what makes money and what doesn't. And that our society is based on if you're white and rich compared to if you're black and poor. Do you know what I'm saying?
How can we change that if that is indeed the case?
I just think, like, for instance, your show with all its consciousness raising and a stronger communal hold and giving is the way.
How do we teach a society what compassion is when they really don't understand themselves in the first place?
Well, then we have to educate the media.
How do we do that? I'm the question guy for you. Can we do that? Can we educate the media?
Only if we can prove to big business that they can make more money if they have an educated public than an ignorant public.
Can you have a big business and make money in a socially conscious way?
Why not?
It seems that a pervasive sentiment amongst some big business people is that first and foremost it's about making the dollar no matter what the implications are. And yet I know of a friend that I met on this program that has a book out that is a testament of his life, that it's quite the contrary, that the way in which you do enrich yourself through financial prosperity, really the only way is through socially conscious dealings. That if you try to rip somebody off to make a buck, in the long run you lose too.
Correct. I really don't know because I'm just trying to learn myself.
How is that process? What is it like to try to learn for oneself?
It is very frustrating because most media and most newspapers are controlled by big business, as like Time Warner and that sort of thing. I'm sorry, but that ilk. And companies, like, I mean, even the music industry is very immersed in that sort of thing. Frank?
I'm listening and I'm nodding my head, and the thought that came to mind is it's a very trying world right now.
It is.
Those of us that are trying to find ourselves in this craziness, it's not an easy task to do.
I mean, I've gone to school for, I'd say, 15 years, and I'm part of that generation. You had a 17-year-old on. And it's like you're trying to find the truth all the time, and you just can't get at it because we've become really cynical, and sometimes we shut our minds off, and yet it's hard. It's so hard. And yet there's a lot of underground magazines, a lot of underground literature that does show the way, but we can't really trust it because it's not the real thing.
I think part of the issue is the truth hurts when you acknowledge that there's such great corruption and deception, for instance, in the government process today. I mean, to acknowledge that exists, or that the possibility exists, would involve giving up a lot of formed beliefs that have been with oneself for years and years. You know, the example I always use is the genocide of the Native Americans. That if we talk about what this country was founded on, you hear about the Constitution and freedom and democracy and all of the rhetoric that you'll hear, for instance, President Bush talk about. But yet this country was founded and taken away from Native American people. And for someone to be willing to acknowledge that at least that possibility exists, that happened. Look at the way history is taught in school. Look at the way we are indoctrinated into a mindset of how we're number one. You've got to give up a lot of those beliefs to open your mind to other possibilities, and most people aren't willing to do that because that is a rather startling revelation, and we usually react out of fear and will stay in denial because somehow what you think you know about yourself or about your country or about your world is enough to just get by. And most people just are okay with just getting by.
Well, it's like if I get cynical about the world and I say it's all controlled by a lot of capitalists, then I sometimes feel that I'm losing the power to control my own world, because to some degree I want to be like that too, but I want to be part of it. It's very hard to make it through that, and yet, you know, you want to understand what the Native Americans went through, and you want to understand what made them a great people, and you want to be as educated as you can be, but there's so many things that are coming in at all the time. You know, there's so many sources of information that are coming in. Sometimes you get overloaded and you just don't know where to begin.
Oh, indeed. This is an information age, and the answer lies within oneself. What you know, it's like David knows what grounds David, what centers you. We can sit here and absorb information constantly,